but it's in good hands.
Well, that's President Trump just a few moments ago as a high-stakes meeting is happening at this hour between Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and the former North Korean intelligence chief as both sides try to salvage that potential summit between President Trump and the North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un. Corey Lewandowski is the former Trump campaign manager and the co-author of the New York Times bestseller, Let Trump Be Trump. Corey, good morning.
Good morning. Great to be with you today.
So a big moment and a big day for this presidency.
Well, it is, and if you looked at, Secretary Pompeo was in New York meeting with a high-ranking government official from North Korea, trying to make sure that if the meeting takes place on the 12th in Singapore, everybody agrees that it is for the best interest of the United States, and that's what Secretary Pompeo is there to do. The issue of denuclearization is the most important issue, and this president has been very clear. If North Korea is willing to have that conversation, this president is willing to come to the table and have that. And by the way, Sandra, this is the first time, and I know, the media overlooks this, that a potential meeting to take place between these two world leaders could happen, and this president doesn't get enough credit for even having the opportunity to have a face-to-face conversation.
Is that the frustration that you hear from the president? I mean, let's talk about this June 12th date, first of all. First, it was on, then it was off, and now the president just a few moments ago said he is expecting a letter from Kim Jong-un by Friday to him. How important is that date to the president? Is he willing to push it back beyond then?
Well, I don't think I think the date is completely arbitrary, right? The more important issue here is making sure that North Korea understands the pressure that the United States has put on them and the maximum campaign that we have put in place to make sure that they are going to denuclearize. Every president in the last 30 years has tried to get this done, and none have been able to. And previous administrations have literally taken pallets of cash and given it to North Korea and said, please don't have a nuclear program, and they laughed at us. This president is very different. If North Korea is not willing to come to the table and be adamant in their resolve to denuclearize the North Korean peninsula, then, I don't know if we're willing to sit down. This is of paramount importance, not just to the North Korean peninsula, but to the entire world.
How big of a win is this for this president so far?
Oh, look, this is a major victory. And again, he doesn't get the credit he deserves on this. He is the first president in the history of our country willing to sit down with the North Korean leader. And, the media at first said the meeting would never happen. Then they said he wouldn't be prepared. Now the meeting may be back on, and they say, well, it really won't get all done at once. He just doesn't get the credit he deserves for all of the great work he's doing on both the domestic and the foreign policy front. And that's a shameful side of the fake news.
But that's, Corey, it appears that the picture being painted by the administration leading up to this potential meeting is pretty rosy. I mean, now we've got the meeting taking place today. That all looks good. They're sitting down right now in New York City, Pompeo and this former spy chief, the second in line to Kim Jong-un. Is perhaps the optimism building too much? I mean, this whole meeting could fall through.
Well, it
never happened.
Look, it could absolutely fall through, and this president has been very clear. If it happens, it happens, and if it doesn't, that's okay. But the discussions that we're having for the potential denuclearization of the North Korean peninsula is very, very important, and I have absolute faith in Secretary Pompeo. We know that he's been to North Korea. He's met with Kim Jong-un. He is now meeting. He met last night, it's been reported, with this official from North Korea. He's meeting with him again today. Yep. And if the secretary believes that it's in the best interest of the United States to have the president at that meeting on the 12th, the president will go there. Yeah. But that is to be determined.
And that was them shaking hands just a few moments ago and sitting down to that table at the UN residences. Meanwhile, I've got to ask you about this. The president talking about Jeff Sessions. He quoted Trey Gowdy in a tweet and said this. He quoted Gowdy saying there are lots of really good lawyers in the country. He could have picked somebody else, referring to the president. And the president retweeted that quote and said, and I wish I did.
Look, I think the president's been very clear with his frustration with the attorney general as it relates to this fake Russia investigation, this hoax that has been perpetuated now for the last 15 months that he's been in office, that there was some type of collusion. We know there was no collusion. And the president, I think, has been very clear. He's disappointed that Attorney General Jeff Sessions did not tell him that he would recuse himself from this investigation prior to being nominated, and that's a fair thing for the president to say. And he's been very public about it. He's very consistent about it, because this whole Russian narrative, which has been a cloud over this administration, never existed. There was no collusion, there was no cooperation, no coordination, and the only campaign that paid a foreign entity to do work for it was the Clinton campaign, and that's where the investigation should be looking.
Interesting stuff. Corey Lewandowski, great to have you on the program this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
White House Press Secretary Sarah Sanders